and welcome to Useless History with Rebecca. My name is Rebecca, and this episode we're talking about Joan of Arc, the Maid of Orleans. I'm pretty sure most of us know at least something about Joan. I became very interested in her when I was about 14 because my family went on a trip to France and we went to several Joan of Arc locations. I got this Joan of Arc figurine while I was there, and after we came back, I even dressed up as her for Halloween. Speaking of, is this historically accurate? Joan of Arc, or Jeanne d'Arc, as she's known in French, was born around the year 1412 in rural France. This is right in the midst of the 100 Years' War with England. During Joan's lifetime, her village came under English control. Side note, at this time there was no king of France, only a Dauphin, which is the French name for the crown prince. This is because at this time the traditional coronation site in Reims, again, bad French, was also under English control. This is not a great scene because not only is England winning, France doesn't even have a king. Joan very famously had visions of angels that many people considered to be authentic. She was around 13 when she had her first vision. I'm going to read a quote from Joan's trial. So to make sure I get it right, I'm going to have my laptop right here. This is what she says. I heard the voice on my right in the direction of the church, and rarely do I hear it without a light. It seemed to me a worthy voice, and I believed it was sent to me by God. After I had heard this voice the third time, I knew that it was the voice of an angel. It taught me to be good, to go regularly to church. This voice told me 2 or 3 times a week that I must go away and that I must come to France. It told me that I should raise the siege laid to the city of Orleans, and I replied that I was a poor girl who knew neither how to ride nor lead in war. It was Saint Michael who I saw before my eyes. He was not alone, but was accompanied by many angels from heaven. I saw them with my bodily eyes as well as I am seeing you, and when they left, I wept and greatly wished that they should have taken me with them. When Joan was about 17, a young man in her village tried to marry her, but she absolutely refused. She still hadn't spoken to anyone about her vision, so she didn't really have a good explanation as to why she wasn't going to get married. She knew that God needed her to save France, but she also knew that she could not do that if she was married. Meanwhile, the voices were becoming more and more insistent. The voices told her that she needed to speak to Robert de Baudricourt, get an audience with the Dauphin, save the city of Orleans, have the Dauphin crowned king, and drive the English out of France. No small task for a girl of 17. No small task for anyone, really. The first time she tried to speak to Baudricourt, he absolutely refused to speak to her. Several months later, she tried again, and her piety and faithfulness convinced him to listen to her. After speaking to her for a while, he believed that her visions were authentic, and he assigned 6 men to take her to Chinon, where the Dauphin was staying. By now, several people believed in Joan's visions. There had been vague prophecies for hundreds of years that a maid of the forests of Lorraine would save France, and Joan's village is in that forest, so many people believed that she was the maid that had been prophesied about. Charles, the Dauphin, did not immediately grant her an audience. I mean, why would you? When he finally allowed her to see him, he disguised himself as a courtier to test her. She entered the room, full of courtiers, ignored them all, and walked right up to him. Charles spoke with her alone. She was able to tell him about things he'd said in private prayers before she'd even met him. This convinced Charles of her legitimacy, and he agreed to allow her to try to take Orleans. Upon arriving in Orleans, Joan was immediately displeased. Her voices had told her to go to one side of the river, but her men had taken her to the other. She got very angry with the commander of Orleans and started reprimanding her men for what they had done. They tried to tell her that they couldn't approach Orleans the way she wanted to. The wind was blowing the wrong way, so their boats would not be able to sail across the river to the city. We have another Joan quote. "In God's name, the counsel of our Lord is safer and wiser than yours. You have thought to deceive me, and you deceive yourself still more, for I bring you better succor than ever came to any knight or city whatever, seeing that it is the succor of the King of Heaven." After her declaration, the wind changed direction. Everyone hurried to do as she had instructed, which I think was rather wise on their part. Joan's forces attacked the city of Orleans. It is unclear how much Joan actually fought. She did have armor and a sword, but in her trial she says herself that she doesn't prefer to use her sword. But then you might be wondering, why does she need armor if she's not fighting? Well, she was still in battle. She really liked to be with her men right in the middle of things. There was one battle where she was injured. An arrow pierced her right above her chest. Everyone thought she was dead. They took her off of the battlefield, and the French were so disheartened that they started to lose. And then when they brought her back, the whole tide of the battle turned. She was very good at motivating her army and striking fear into the hearts of the English. In the end, the French, under Joan, took back Orleans. This is why she's known as the Maid of Orleans. This sparked a series of victories for the French. They started taking city after city, carving a path through English-controlled France. Before long, Joan was at the Dauphin's coronation just as she promised she'd be. Now all she had left to do was drive the English out of France. Comparatively, it seems a much easier task. I'm focusing on Joan as a person in this video, so I'm not going to be going really in depth into her tactics and the military history. I will say that she was not just a figurehead, she was not just a cheerleader in battle. She had a say in battle plans. She was very, very good at placing artillery. One English-controlled city saw how Joan had set up her artillery and immediately surrendered. She was that good. Joan's victories were impressive to say the least, but they didn't last. She had always said that once her mission was complete, she would die, and unfortunately, she was correct. Joan was captured by English forces and placed in prison. She was kept in a tower that I've actually seen. Before long, they placed her on trial. They accused her of several things, including blasphemy and wearing men's clothing. Now, you might be wondering, what's so awful about wearing men's clothing? It was technically against the law or the rules of the church. The church really, really didn't like it. One interesting thing about Joan's trial is that we actually have a transcript of it. Transcriptions were really expensive and hard to make at the time, so not every trial got a transcript. I figure they wanted a transcript of Joan's trial in particular because, they were trying to kill her. And I figure that if you're gonna sentence a teenage girl to death, you're really gonna want to have your reasons very clearly laid out, so that when someone confronts you about it and is like, hey, you sentenced a teenage girl to death. By burning her at the stake, you can say, oh, look, here are my reasons. When asked about the men's clothes, she pointed out that several female saints had also worn men's clothes for the same reason she did, to protect their chastity. I don't want to say it. The court accepted this argument and made her promise not to do it again. They also questioned her extensively about her visions. Joan refused to answer some of the questions, but the answers she did give are very interesting. She says that the angels called her a daughter of God, which would have been a truly blasphemous thing to say at the time. The court intentionally tried to trap her with certain questions. For example, they asked her if she was in God's grace. The reason this is a trap is because if you say no, you're admitting guilt. But if you say yes, you're judging yourself instead of allowing God to judge you. Only God can decide if you're in God's grace. Joan's reply was very intelligent. She said, if I am not, may God put me there, and if I am, may God keep me there. After several days of trial, Joan was found in her cell wearing men's clothes again. She said that she had done it because 2 of her guards had come into her cell and tried to attack her, and she hadn't felt safe in a skirt. The court said that by wearing pants, Joan had gone back on her word and was a relapsed heretic. They sentenced her to be burned at the stake. I think it's very likely that Joan was allowed to keep her men's clothing with her so that she would have an opportunity to go back on her word. I also think it's rather likely that the court instructed her guards to go to her cell and threaten her, so she felt like she needed to wear the men's clothes. They wanted a teenage girl dead so badly that they threatened her with assault. Joan was burned at the stake in wool. I've seen the place where she was burned. The spot where the stake was now has a cross in its place. There's a beautiful flower garden surrounding it, and there's a statue of Joan in the corner of the courtyard. It's very beautiful. Several years after her death, a retrial was held. Friends, family, neighbors, religious experts, they all came to testify on her behalf. It was determined that she was not guilty of hearsay or anything else. Later, Joan was made a saint by the Catholic Church, and she's still a patriotic symbol in France to this day. People have been asking for a long time what Joan's deal was, and we're not exactly sure. Some people have suggested that she was schizophrenic, but other people say that she behaves in ways that are too mentally healthy, and she's clearly like a very competent leader, which doesn't really match with someone who's suffering from schizophrenia so severe that they're hearing voices constantly. It is certainly strange that a teenage girl was able to do everything that she did. Many Catholics and other Christians believe that God truly spoke to her. I'm not Catholic, but I'm rather inclined to agree. In all honesty, Joan's visions sound authentic to me. That's just my biased opinion. I can never know. I was going to end the video there and go right into my little outro, but as I was setting up for this video, I realized that I had something I wanted to say, and I didn't feel like scripting it, so I'm just gonna wing it. When I was about 14 and trying to assemble a Joan of Arc Halloween costume, I of course turned to Halloween costume websites, and I wish that I had not. They really went and made sexy Joan of Arc costumes, and I have a lot of opinions about that. Here's the thing. Joan dressed in trousers and other men's clothing specifically because she was afraid of being assaulted. Now, I'm not here to tell anyone they're not allowed to wear a skimpy Halloween costume as long as it's not at a Halloween party that has children at it. Honestly, that sounds like a whole lot of none of my business, and I really don't want to get involved, but I have very many opinions about sexy Joan of Arc costumes and tangentially related sexy nun costumes. Both of those things make me uncomfortable for similar reasons. Joan died because she wore pants because she felt threatened, and you're gonna go and make her all sexy. Also, I'd like to point out that when Joan died, she was a teenager, so you're also sexualizing teenage girls, which is never groovy. Let me just say, as a teenage girl who's about the same age as Joan when she was killed, like, can you imagine if I was burned at the stake because I tried to protect myself from being assaulted, and then people turned me into a sexy Halloween costume? Stop calling sexy medieval warrior outfits Joan of Arc costumes. Lots of them aren't super specific to Joan. You can literally change the name and it'll be fine. Just make it sexy medieval warrior, not sexy Joan of Arc. It's literally that easy. Joan of Arc is not a synonym for female medieval warrior, okay? She's a human being. She's a teenage girl who was killed. And while we're on the topic, sexy nun costumes, I needed to stop. In Catholicism, they believe that nuns are metaphorically married to Christ, and so it's a little bit weird to make them sexy, especially because their whole thing is that they don't do that. In conclusion, Joan is a fascinating young woman. She's strong, she's intelligent, she's dedicated, she's just such a compelling, inspiring figure. And then seeing her made into a skimpy Halloween costume is just, it's upsetting. I don't like it and I need it to stop. Please stop. Would it be an episode of Useless History if I didn't get upset about something? No. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Useless History with Rebecca. This is the first one that I've filmed. All the other ones have just been like little slideshows on my Instagram story. I've put all my references in the description, so if you feel like fact checking me, you can. I really don't plan on my channel being just Useless History. There's a lot of other things I want to do. I have several ideas, but if I'm completely honest, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I don't really know why I'm doing it. I was just kind of like sitting in quarantine like, hey, I think it would be fun to do YouTube videos. Probably only my friends and family will watch it, but honestly, that's the only people I really care about. I'm kind of loving this setup. I had to reorganize my entire room to get this table where it is, but I think I like it better. Anyway, I've been talking for far too long. Have a lovely day, and don't you dare press the subscribe button because it will inflate my ego.